people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Sergey Bohachuk versus Brandon Adams 2 to support Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford. Short of fighting for a title in the world's deepest division, Sergey Bohachuk most longs to remove the blemishes from his record on the high-profile Canelo Alvarez versus Terence Crawford undercard from Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas on September 13th. Ukraine's Bohachuk, 26-2 with 24 knockouts, will have that opportunity in a junior middleweight rematch against Brandon Adams, a former contender winner who stopped him in the 8th round of their initial meeting in Puerto Rico back in 2021. Two sources with knowledge of the bout informed Boxing Scene about it on Saturday. At the time of his stoppage against Adams, Bohachuk, 30, was leading on all three judges' scorecards, and he sought to finish Adams when he got unexpectedly rocked and was stopped himself. Am I always telling you guys, in pursuing the knockout, you run the risk of being knocked out and forcing it, as opposed to just letting it happen. Bohachuk versus Adams 2 is expected to round out the primary three-fight undercard supporting the undisputed super middleweight bout between four-division champions Canelo Alvarez and Terence Crawford, likely replacing a lower-profile catchweight bout between Saudi Arabia's Mohamed Alakel and John Orlenas. A junior middleweight clash between the unbeaten pair Callum Walsh and Fernando Vargas Jr., and a super middleweight bout between another unbeaten pair in Christian Billy versus Lester the Molester Martinez has been reserved for the primary undercard. Bohachuk is the number 1 ranked WBC junior middleweight contender under the champion Sebastian Fundora and the interim champion Virgil Ortiz, who edged Bohachuk by majority decision in August of last year. Whilst Bohachuk fervently wants another crack at Ortiz, after knocking him down twice, he's confided to associates that he learned the most by losing to Adams. The 36-year-old Brandon Adams, 25-4, with 16 knockouts, has fought just 3 times since defeating Bohachuk, including, most recently, his loss in November of last year to Andreas Katsourakis. In 2019, he lost the unanimous decision to then WBC middleweight champion Jermall Charlo. For Bohachuk, who has been training in Big Bear Lake, California, the opportunity to avenge the loss and gain the exposure on this card is too rich to bypass. I wonder if Sergey will be able to make the weight for this fight, because he didn't make it for his last fight, and if he has to force himself down to 154, I would have sooner recommended a title shot at Bakram Murtazaliev. Bakram, who's now left without a dance partner as a result of Erickson Lubin leaving him high and dry for a Virgil Ortiz fight. Feels like there's still time. This Bohachuk versus Adams rematch is tantamount to an industry rumor right now. It hasn't yet been made official, not at this time, so maybe there's still enough time to make a Bohachuk versus Murtazaliev fight instead. Russia versus Ukraine. Art imitates life. Or is that a bit too taboo for a boxing ring? But those nations are both at war with each other right now, so why don't two boxers hash it out with each other right now? Why not? It's just a suggestion. In any event, if they do Bohachuk versus Adams, I'll take it. I won't complain, because it's not a pay-per-view. It's not a box office fight. It don't cost me and you nothing extra to watch these undercard fights. I'll tune in to see Sergey get his revenge, and if they do fight again, I think he'll get it. Sergey has improved. If he wins, in theory, he may become Virgil Ortiz's problem, because Virgil's interim champion and Sergey's ranked at number 1. Would the WBC order a rematch, or to avoid ordering a rematch, would they order Sergey to fight Sebastian, or would they order Virgil to fight Sebastian. Something's gotta give. WBC ranks a logjam. Doesn't seem to me that Virgil Ortiz really wants a shot at Sebastian's belt, so he should just hurry up and drop that interim title. Let Sergey fight for it. You ain't done nothing with it in a year. He's about to fight Erickson Lubin. Not a bad fight, but not a great one either. They're pretending that they wanted to get Xander Zayas in the ring, and we've been all through that. Yeah, that's why they went to Keith Thurman first, because of how bad they want to fight Xander. Back over to Sergey, who seems to have rubbed his excellency the right way, and he is so rewarding him, not just with a slot on Canelo versus Crawford, but a chance at revenge. Revenge on Brandon, who gave him his first professional loss, who stopped him 4 years ago. 4 years later, it's Sergey that's got all the momentum, and I think it's going to be Sergey that has his hand raised. Preliminary thoughts? I think he gets the knockout this time. I think Sergey stops Brandon Adams. In men's light heavyweight news, Dmitry Bivol was ordered by the WBO to submit certification of his injury, i.e., a show cause letter. Mr. Bivol is hereby ordered to submit in writing to the WBO within 10 days upon notice of this letter a detailed medical explanation of his injury, findings, recovery process, and physician's opinion as to when he will be physically and medically cleared to compete. WBO Championship Committee Chairman Luis Batista Salas stated in a formal order, a copy of which was obtained by Boxing Scene to Vadim Kornilov, Bivol's manager. Failure to comply with this order will result in Mr. Bivol waiving all his rights hereunder and with the committee proceedings per WBO regulations of World Championship contests. The move from the WBO comes as Bivol remains on the hook to next face IBF mandatory challenger Michael Eifert. The overdue mandatory title defense was on the verge of heading to a purse bid when Bivol suddenly underwent surgery for injuries he claimed he's carried for much of his career, and I don't think he's lying. I don't. Because ahead of his initial meeting with Artur Beterbiev, his ex-wife, Kate Bivol, let it be known that he's got quite a few nagging injuries. She did this as a means to spite Dmitry Bivol in hopes that that knowledge might prove useful to Artur Beterbiev, knowing that Dimitri's got all these injuries he's dealing with. So that now when Dmitry takes time out to deal with one or some of these injuries, I'm not surprised. The WBO wishes to express its sincere understanding of the difficult circumstances Mr. Bivol is currently facing. Batista Salas noted, his dedication, discipline, and sportsmanship have made him an exemplary champion, and his career stands as a testament to the highest ideals of boxing. The WBO recognizes the sacrifices he has made for the sport and values the prestige he has brought to the light heavyweight division. These procedures are not intended to diminish his personal situation, but rather to uphold the integrity of the championships in a manner that is fair to all. While such guidelines may appear strict, they are necessary to ensure transparency and consistency. Above all, the WBO extends its best wishes for a full recovery and looks forward to the day when Mr. Bivol can once again showcase his extraordinary skills in the ring. Now, Boxing Scene has since learned that Dmitry Bivol's team has submitted the requested paperwork. The WBO has yet to publicly confirm, but once they do, if all the paperwork checks out, this should buy him time. This should get him amnesty with the WBO, but perhaps not the IBF. I recall when Joe Cordina became injured. After becoming IBF champion, after knocking out Kenichi Ogawa, he suffered a hand injury. And the IBF didn't care. They had a mandatory in the queue they wanted him to satisfy, and because he couldn't, since he was out injured, they stripped him. Now Dmitry Bivol has a mandatory in the queue via the IBF, a long overdue one in Michael Eifert, who became the mandatory well over a year ago. To where even if he can get amnesty from the WBO, that doesn't carry over to the IBF. They are autonomous. When the WBO eats, the IBF don't shit. They could still strip him. Would it be better if they did? If there were another alphabet title out there in circulation for the light heavyweights to fight for, I would look at that as a silver lining. I'm not proposing that they strip him, But if they did, that'd be me looking on the bright side, that's another title that's out there while Dmitry is away for these guys to fight for, because the show must go on. Everyone, for the most part, will still recognize Dmitry Bivol as the man to beat, the best in show at light heavyweight until such a time as he's actually beaten in the ring, irrespective of what alphabet titles get dispersed.
He is a phenomenal young fighter. I've been involved with all the best British fighters, most of the best British fighters, and some of the best fighters from around the world. And at this stage of his career, the amount of fights, 13 fights he's had, he for me stands out among.
Yeah, brilliant.
Of all the comparisons that are being made between Moses Itauma at his very young age and what was Kid Dynamite Mike Tyson, Moses Itauma himself said, Mike Tyson had his own career, I just want to make mine. And I really, really like that answer, because so often, when a young fighter starts to get heaps and heaps of praise upon them, they revel in it and perhaps make too much of it. They only build you up to break you down, and I hope that Moses understands that.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Upon his professional debut, there was a push to perhaps try and break Mike Tyson's record as the youngest reigning heavyweight world champion. Get Moses to a title sooner than later so that he can unseat Mike for that claim. We now know that's not gonna happen.
Currently, there's only one champion in the heavyweight division, one bona fide champion, one legitimate champion, and that's Alexander Usyk. At 20 years old, only 13 fights into his pro career, he's not ready for Usyk, and underneath it all, everybody knows that, but that's not stopping them from hyping him up.
That's not stopping Tyson Fury from making that recommendation.
I keep getting asked about young Moses Itauma fighting Alexander Usyk and fighting other big names. And my opinion is not someone who don't know boxing. My opinion is someone who has been there and won every single belt, won everything there is to win in boxing, and done very well. Boxing is a young man's game. Like I told Vladimir Klitschko when he was 37, boxing's a young man's game and he waits for nobody. So here's the opinion, you've heard it here first. Moses Itauma will wreck all them old men out of the division. Usyk, AJ, Miller, whoever there is who's old, Zhang, fucking whoever else there is, Luis Ortiz, all these big names of the past are all a spent force. And even the world champion now, if they took my belts and give them to Usyk, Moses will wreck him, because he's a young man versus an old man.
The problem with that evaluation is Usyk has proven that wrong more than once, so did Fury forget that he's younger than Usyk?
Usyk beat him 2 times. He can be in denial about it if he wants. The rest of the world ain't.
He's younger than Usyk, Daniel Dubois younger than Usyk, AJ's younger than Usyk, and Usyk beat them all. So this whole thing about it being a young man's game, maybe that applies to your average boxer going about their career, but Usyk is well above average.
If you put Moses Itauma in there with him now, it would ruin Moses. And why would you want to do that when he's only 20 years old and you know, like I know, like everybody else knows? Usyk is on his way out anyway. Usyk has maybe one more fight left in him.
There's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the sport of boxing. It's become a regular occurrence to go against what you already know because of what you feel, what you would like to think.
Everybody knows Usyk has maybe one more fight. And there's every possibility that he might wrap it up, that this might be it.
I also like how Tyson Fury conveniently leaves himself out of that equation, that Itauma wrecks everybody who's older than him. Well, that includes you, Fury. You're older than him. Fury is seeking refuge in his retirement claim, except he's come out of retirement so many times I've lost count that nobody really believes that he's retired right now. That at some point next year, he's going to come back.
And when he does, do you think he's going to step up to the plate? Do you think he's going to fight Itauma?
I appreciate Itauma's reserve and his stoicism in the midst of all of this, all the praise they're heaping upon him, that he's staying focused, he's staying centered. He doesn't seem to be reveling in it like so many other young fighters would, drinking their own Kool-Aid.
Do they sell Kool-Aid in the UK?
I'm not sure. He made a recommendation, that is, his team has already made the recommendation that his very next fight should be America's own Jermaine Franklin. The reason for it, Jermaine has gone the distance with both Dillian White and Anthony Joshua, two of the bigger punchers in the division. He may be able to give Moses some rounds where Dillian could not this weekend, and I like the idea of that fight. Moses barely broke a sweat this weekend.
Fight was over before it started. There's no reason that he can't squeeze in another one before this year is out. Give him a few weeks rest from the camp that he just had, then get him back out there in November or December against Jermaine, who to my knowledge is not otherwise preoccupied.
Oh, it's a testament to how good this kid is, that a Jermaine Franklin fight can be interpreted as taking it easy, taking it slow, fighting somebody like Jermaine. When the feeling is that Moses is ready for much bigger and better game, bigger and better names, why rush? He's only 20 years old.
What do you think that fight would look like?
What I remember of Jermaine Franklin in action, he's no Glass Joe. He can hold a shot. Mid-range to inside, he's quite formidable. He's got speed within close quarters. Not that much power.
I'm not saying he's pillow-fisted, but he's not one of the more heavy-handed guys in the division. He's not a Zhang.
Not a Joshua, more of a Jarrell Miller.
A Hrgovic.
Of course you don't want to let him hit you clean. Of course you don't want to let Jermaine Franklin keep landing on you. But in terms of power, he's not that high on the power scale, though he is durable, game, and formidable within close quarters. I think that Jermaine can provide a stiffer test for Moses Itauma than Dillian White just did. I see no reason they shouldn't be able to schedule that fight before this year is out. There is plenty of time to do it, and Moses barely broke a sweat this weekend. So I hope it happens, and I hope they don't make the same mistake they made this weekend. They built that fight as a pay-per-view here in America where it should not have been.
This is an international platform. You have to know your market. You have to know that Americans are not so pressed to see Moses Itauma that they're going to fork over $50 for that show in this economy. Have you seen the price of eggs?
Now, maybe in the UK you can get away with that because they pay less overall for a pay-per-view than we do. But here in America, where it costs twice as much and sometimes more than that, you gotta cut it out.
Come on.
Moses really is the leader of the new school. Of all the young boxers that are coming through in the heavyweight division, Richard Torres,
The unbeaten ones like Tara Moana, Fabio Wardley,
Pat Brown, Leo Atang, Moses Itauma is the standout. Moses Itauma is the best in show so far. 13 fights in. The play has to be making him accessible to the audience. We've been over this a million times. We'll go over it a million more. Sports are at their best when they are accessible to the consumer, to the common man. You can't treat sports like a luxury item.
If you want to grow Moses' following, you have to let people see him. The kid's made for TV, he is.
But I don't want to see him on pay-per-view for a while. I do not. Moses Itauma at 13-0 is not yet box office. You can't force that upon us.
I'd love for this kid to fight 2-3 times a year if he can, because it's still very early. And in the early goings of a fighter's career, they usually fight 3 to 4 times a year. How fast he's wrapping these guys up, these fights?
He's got plenty of time to have another one before this year is out.
So let's hope they get him out at least one more time.